So let's continue with where we left at the last session. We were on to the salient features, and we have covered with the single citizenship, universal adult franchise, and we were on fundamental rights. The fundamental rights that we have discussed so far are the right to equality, right to freedom of religion, and right against exploitation we have to do. So these are what we have already covered. Does anybody have any doubt in these sessions that were done? So we finished was the right against exploitation. Next we have the right to freedom of religion. Then we'll come back to the right to education. Now what does the right to freedom of religion tell us all about? The right to freedom of religion is a part of the articles 25 to 28 of our constitution. And as far as the provisions of those articles go, it tells us that all people are entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice, and propagate their religion. This means, as a citizen of India, we have the freedom to profess and propagate. This means whichever religion we want to follow and we want to talk about, we have the freedom to do that by being the citizens of this country. Subject to public order, morality, and health, every religious denomination or section will have the right to establish or maintain institutions for religious purposes, to manage their own affairs as far as their own religion is concerned. They can own and acquire movable and immovable property in case they want to do so under the freedom of religion, and they can administer such property in accordance with the law. So the people have the freedom to manage their own religious affairs as is given in front of you on the slide. Then we have the freedom from paying any kind of tax. There is no tax which is imposed on our citizens for maintaining any kind of a religion. This means if you go back to history, I'm sure you must have heard about the poll tax and jizya and all. You did it in grade 7. Do you
Yes,
all
ma'am.
remember? Yes. So that those days, in those time periods, there was a tax for being belonging to a particular religion. In fact, during the Mughal dynasty time period also, there was a tax which is imposed on the people of all those who were non-Muslims. So those were done away with. So for this, under our constitutional provisions, we have the freedom of not paying any kind of a tax. So for being part of any particular religion, we are not taxed. And no religious instructions in these institutions are maintained out of the state funds. Now, whatever institution, in case there is any institution which has been set up by the state fund, means by the money which has been granted or given by the government, then in those kind of institutions, no religious instructions can be imparted. This is one clause which has been given, that if the state government or the central government has provided for the um, establishment or development of an institution related to a particular religion, then there is a clause which needs to be followed, that no religious instruction will be imparted there. It will be a institution only for religious purposes, but not as far as any instructions are imparted. Yes, if any person wants to make his or her own private institution, then you have the freedom to do that. But something which is maintained out of government funds and government revenue, then there no religious instructions can be imparted. So the right to freedom of religion gives us the right that no person will be compelled to pay tax for promotion of any particular kind of a religion. No religious instruction can be imparted in these kinds of institutions. Even though religious instructions may be imparted in educational institutions, now please make a note of this point, which says that no religious instructions in institutions maintained can be, what it means is that some religious instructions may be imparted in educational institutions which are recognized by or receiving state funds, but no person attending such institution will be compelled to receive that instruction without the consent of that person or the guardian of that person. Say, for example, if there is a religious institution which is imparting certain instructions, then in that case, any person who goes to attend those classes will not be compelled to do so without the consent of that person himself or herself, or if the person has a guardian. In case that person or the pupil, the student is a minor, then the guardian's consent is required that we are trying to impart religious instruction. If there is no consent, then no religious instructions can be imparted to people as far as the religions of our country are concerned. Next, we have the cultural and the educational rights. The cultural and educational rights are constituted under Article 29 and Article 30. So under that, first it talks about the right to conserve language, script and culture, which is basically protection of the minorities. So Article 29 gives a section of people a right to preserve their distinctive language, script and culture. In such a case, any educational institution maintained by the state, the admission cannot be denied to such kind of an institute on the basis of the person's religion, color, caste, creed or sex. So under Article 29, this right to language, script and culture is basically been given for the minority communities. Now in our country, the minority communities are based on the religious aspect, that depending on which religion you profess, the minority community is based on that. So those belonging to any minority community. Now minority communities in our country are communities like of the Muslims, the Sikhs, the Jains, the Buddhists, the Jews, the Parsis, all these are considered as part of minority community. Now, how minority community? Because when we take into account the total population of the country, and if we divide it as far as the religious aspect is concerned, then the number of people falling into that category is much less and does not come as a majority. So those people are considered as a minority in our country, and minorities have been given certain kind of concession. So under that concession, they have the right to preserve their own language and their culture. This means nobody can forcibly take away their culture from them, and nobody can stop them from practicing their own culture. Whatever are their prescribed norms, customs from time immemorial to come, all the minority communities have the right to preserve them. So this right under the right to cultural and educational right has been granted by the provisions of our constitution to the citizens of our country. Then under Article 30, the minorities have also been given the right to establish and administer their own educational institutions. So the minority community can establish their educational institutions only relevant and pertaining to their own religious community. So in such a case, the state is prohibited from discriminating against educational institutions in the matter of grants. What it means is, Yashraj, give me a second, I'll explain. What it means is that the state cannot have any kind of a discriminatory policy when it comes to grant to be given to certain educational institutions. This means if the country has to give grants to educational institutions, irrespective of the religious community that educational institution belongs to, the government cannot have any kind of a discriminatory policy. Rights have been granted to us, and if any of these fundamental rights of ours is violated, is not granted to us, so in order to protect those freedoms, the right to constitutional remedies was enacted. The right to constitutional remedies tells us that these fundamental rights are justiciable. Justiciable means that we can file a suit in any of the courts in case any of our fundamental rights has been violated. So for example, if somebody's right to freedom or right to property is or right to education is not being granted, then under the right to constitutional remedy, that person can move to court and can take that person, can sue the person who is trying to violate one of the fundamental rights of the party concerned. So Article 32 of our constitution, please make a note of it, gives the right to constitutional remedies, and this right is given to our constitution, its right is given by our constitution to our citizens, whereby they can move the Supreme Court for the enforcement of any of the other fundamental rights. So as far as Dr. Ambedkar was concerned, he described this as the heart and soul of the constitution. That is, Article 32 is the heart and soul of the constitution, because if we don't give this right to the people, then any time any of the basic fundamental rights of the people can be violated. So under this act, there is something known as a writ. Now writ is a formal written order. Now under the right to constitutional remedies, and under Article 32 there is something else which is known as a writ. As you can see on your screen here, writ is a legal document which orders the performance of some action or an order given by the Supreme Court to protect the fundamental rights of the citizen. So it's basically like an order which tells that we should stop doing something wrong. So the correct definition of writ is that it is a formal written order issued by the Supreme Court and the High Court to provide legal remedies to all those people who do not obtain adequate protection under ordinary laws. And as far as the constitution of our country is concerned, the enforcement of the fundamental rights, the issues of the writs, and making of laws by the parliament and suspension of this right is as far as the different clauses of Article 32 are concerned. So under this, they have given 5 writs to us. Okay. Is writ clear to you all that it is a legal document which orders the performance of some action to be stopped in order to protect somebody's rights? Now we move on further to how many types of writs are there and what do they tell us. The first writ is habeas corpus. Now habeas corpus means to have the body. By issuing such a right, the High Court or the Supreme Court can get any person released if that person has been unlawfully detained by someone else or by a group of people. So in order to safeguard the personal freedom of any individual, this writ has been incorporated, which means to have a body here basically means to get a person released if in case that person has been unlawfully detained. Please make a note of the word unlawfully detained, which means that the person does not have the legal authority to detain, or a group of people don't have the legal authority to detain another person. Then in such a case, the habeas corpus writ is brought into practice, and as far as that provision is concerned, then that person is released from the control or charge of the people who have unlawfully trying to detain that person. So this habeas corpus is mainly for ensuring the personal freedom of the citizen of our country. Next writ is mandamus. Now mandamus basically means, mandamus is a word which has been taken from a Latin word, and it means we order. Okay, so in Latin it means we order. This means it's a command and an order from a court which is higher to a lower court or to a lower administrative authority in trying to tell them that you have to perform a specific duty. Say for example, if some of the administrative offices are not trying to perform a duty under their discharge, or one of the courts is not trying to abide by the rules and regulations, then in such a case the superior court or the Supreme Court or the court higher than the other courts will give them an order that by order you have to perform this duty, otherwise you are liable to be charged for no discharge of duty, and there can be a punishment met towards you. So that is what mandamus means, is that we order the people below us to perform a certain kind of a duty. The third writ is the writ of prohibition. Now writ of prohibition basically is to prohibit means, I'm sure you all know the word prohibit means to stop for something. So writ of prohibition is the writ of prohibition issued again by one of the senior courts to the lower court in order to stop proceedings in a case which might be in excess of the jurisdiction of the lower court. This means sometimes what happens is that when one of the proceedings in the lower court is not under the prerogative of that court, but still they're trying to move on with the case, then in such a case the superior court tells them that this is not under your jurisdiction and you're not supposed to move on with these kind of proceedings. Then this writ of prohibition is taken into consideration. Writ of certiorari is about information what is going on in the courts, and it is again issued by a superior court to one of the judicial authorities, and by this the superior court wants to know as to what all is going on in as far as the proceedings of the court and all are concerned. So the writ of prohibition is issued when proceedings are going on, but the writ of certiorari is issued when after the order has been passed by a lower court. Supposing one order against somebody has been passed by one of the lower courts, then in that particular scenario the superior court, maybe the High Court or the Supreme Court, can issue this writ, and under this writ they would want to know as to what all proceedings were going on in the lower court and how that judgment has been passed and what order has been passed. So all they want to know is part of this writ. The last of the writs is quo warranto. Quo warranto means by what order, as to who has issued that order. So this order is issued when a person has usurped any office. Usurped any office basically means when any official, government official, is indulging in any kind of a corrupt practice, any kind of a wrongdoing which is not authorized by law. So in that case, this writ prevents the public officers from forcibly or wrongly holding any kind of a public office. Sometimes people try to take advantage of their situations and advantage of the designations they are under it. So in that particular case, if the people are indulging in any kind of a corrupt practice or any kind of a misgiving, wrongdoing or a misbehavior, then under this writ of quo warranto, the person is then prevented from doing any kind of a wrong. So basically these writs make the last right of ours, this right, the right to constitutional remedy, they make it more important, and these writs ensure that the right to constitutional remedy is enforced uh, in its true spirit. Because if this right to constitutional remedies is taken away, then all the fundamental rights of the human beings or the citizens of India can be violated. So the right to constitutional remedies consists of these writs, which are very, very important as far as the granting of the fundamental rights to the Indian citizens are concerned. Now, when we have certain rights being given to us, we also have fundamental duties. Because if we want to take something, then it is the law of nature that when you want to take something, you have to give something in return. So that is why we have something which is known as fundamental duties. Now, under fundamental duties, as citizens, we have certain duties which we need to do towards our country, towards our family, towards our nation. And these are basically in order to protect the or to protect the unity, integrity, and the public property, which is also part of our property. And when we do these kind of duties, they are known as fundamental duties. Fundamental duties can be categorized under four headings, main four sections. One is a duty towards our own self and towards our family and children. Then how, as citizen of India, should we perform those duties which will protect our environment? Then we have certain duties towards our state. State means the government and the society that we live in. And all these comprise as our overall duties towards our nation. Because if the constitution provides us with certain fundamental rights, then to avail those rights, it is our foremost duty to perform the fundamental duties towards our nation's environment, towards ourselves, and towards our family also. So fundamental duties basically consist of certain areas, and they are part of Article 51A under the fourth part of the Constitution of our country. These are certain duties which every citizen of our country is supposed to perform. So first is to abide by the Constitution. This means whatever are the provisions of the Constitution, we must follow the provisions of the Constitution in totality. And when we are doing so, then automatically we will protect the unity, integrity of our nation. The ideas, the noble ideas which were working for the freedom struggle of our country through the leaders, those national ideas or those noble ideas of liberty, equality, fraternity, all these have to be followed in totality and they should be cherished. This means we should not forget the freedom struggle that our leaders indulged and how we got our freedom. So it is our duty to follow those noble ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Then when, if need be, we must render our services. This means we should be ready to offer our services for the cause of the nation, and we also need to defend our country. That is why we have the defense forces, where people willingly join the defense forces without caring for their life, because they know that anytime their life and their life is at risk, but because they have the love for the nation, that is why they go and opt for the defense services. So to defend the country and to render national service is also a duty which all citizens of our country have to perform. As citizens of India, we need to have brotherhood, love, harmony. When we have all these, then automatically we will be able to preserve our culture. We will maintain relationships with each other. We will have fraternity, brotherhood, and we will think like one. We will not think of ourselves, or rather, because we are a secular nation, we should not think of ourselves as Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Parsis, Christians. We should think of ourselves as Indians, that we are all Indians and we do not belong to any religious community, but one community of brotherhood and love. So we should not have these kind of compartments in our lives where we try to disintegrate the fabric, the very fabric of our country. As citizens of our country, we need to protect our environment, which I'm sure people are doing it to their level best. We try to protect our environment by so many practices where we ensure that the pollution levels go down. The environment needs to be protected. Otherwise, if the environment is not protected, then tomorrow the generations to come will have nothing but a bare planet to them. We also need to develop the spirit of inquiry and reform. Inquiry basically means that we need to know what all is going around. We need to do research. We need to be humanistic. And we also have to have a scientific outlook when we are talking about our duty towards our nation. Very important duty is to protect public property. Now, this is something where we people are lacking behind as Indians, because what I'm sure you must have also observed, whenever there is any kind of a disruptive behavior, or when people feel that something is not going as per their, in accordance to their requirements, people start damaging public property. I'm sure you must have seen people putting buildings to fire, public property like buses, trains to fire in case any of the demands are not met. So we need to safeguard our public property. Why? Because we fail to realize that this public property is our property. This public property is made from the taxes which the citizens of the country pay. When we pay revenue, when we pay taxes, the public property is made and maintained. So we need to have a policy where we need to ensure that nobody disturbs and damages the public property, and we must not indulge in violence. To abjure violence means to do away with violence. No violent activities or practices should be indulged by the citizens of our country, because if we do that, then we are not following the basic principles of equality, brotherhood, and fraternity.
Ma'am,
Yes.
this to safeguard public properties, like when there was a law of CA, many people fired buses and houses. Ma'am,
Yes, exactly. So that we should not do, because we fail to understand that this property does public property doesn't mean it is for public. Public, we are public. We are the ones who pay our taxes, and all these things are built, and these public properties are for our convenience only. If the buses and trains stop running, or if we have disturbed damaging them, then who will be at loss? It will be we people who will be at loss, which people fail to realize. So that's why we say that as the citizen of our country, we must protect our public property. It does not mean that whatever is inside my house, or whatever is like my personal car or my personal radio, TV, that is mine, and the rest is not mine. No, whatever is in the country belongs to everybody, and we all need to put in a combined effort to protect all those. Okay. Next, it says is that we should strive towards excellence. This means we should try our level best to enhance our qualities, our skills, because once we enhance ourselves as an individual, then our family enhances, the family constitutes, then from the family it goes on to the town, city, state, nation, and that is how the whole world will excel, and we will be able to live in a happier environment. So we need to excel ourselves in an individual and collective manner, so that we are at a higher level and we enjoy all those rights which have been granted to us, and we live a life of dignity, so that everybody gets the equal share of whatever is entitled to them. So once we follow all these duties as the citizen of India, we will have a much happier environment all around us. So these are duties towards self and children, is where we can develop our skills in such a manner. For environment, we need to protect the forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife. In fact, we have so many NGOs who are working towards all these aspects. People have made up homes for the dogs, for the cows, for the natural, for the living creatures and all. So all these efforts go towards the protection of the environment, which we all must contribute towards.
Can you show the previous slide?
Duties concerning the
Ma'am,
environment.
Ma'am,
Previous to
previous
this?
and
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
So we must have scientific temper, humanism, like I told you, we must
Yes,
develop
ma'am.
our skills, and we should think. Scientific temper here means we should start thinking logically and in an analytical manner. We should not allow superstitions to come and dominate us and our nature. Okay, because once we start inquiring, that is how, if you remember how Renaissance began. Renaissance began because people started to inquire, people started to exchange their ideas of life, people started to exchange what they felt, and that is how the whole world changed, and it was a revival of the thinking. So when we develop this kind of an aspect in ourselves also, the entire community and the nation prospers and benefits. Now here, some of the very important duties that we must do is to follow the constitution. We must respect our national flag and the national anthem. Many a time people have seen that why do we need to stand for the national anthem? This is just to show respect. And in case we find any national flag of ours in any kind of a form fallen down, we must pick it up and we must put it in a safe place, because these are very, very important aspects as far as our country is concerned. Because since we are an independent and a free nation, we have our own national flag and a national anthem, and a lot of lives are sacrificed in order to become free from the foreign yoke. So that is why we
What?
must protect and uphold our country's unity and integrity. And of course, we have to defend our own nation from any kind of a foreign aggression. And we must be ready to sacrifice ourselves and our lives for the sake of our nation. So these are certain more duties which we can perform for the benefit of our nation by preserving our culture, our heritage. We are citizens of one of those nations of the world which has a very, very old and a rich history and heritage. So we must ensure that we indulge in those kind of practices which takes us up higher in the ladder rather than bringing us down.